Have you tried before to memorize Surah Al-Baqarah or any other surah in the Quran and you were not successful? You forgot all that you memorized? In this video, I'll tell you how to memorize Surah Al-Baqarah very quickly in as little as 8 days and never forget it. I'll explain to you a method that I developed and used to memorize Surah Al-Baqarah without forgetting it. I hope my method, God willing, inshallah, will benefit you, whatever your age and whatever your ability to memorize. I'll show you in this video step by step how can you use this method anywhere without the need to buy anything. A completely free method. All you need is to have access to the internet. And I'll tell you toward the end of the video how much time you need to use this method successfully. Watch the video. Let's talk about why we memorize the Quran. We memorize the Quran to benefit from it in this world and the hereafter. In this world, Allah told us, أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. Verily, in the remembrance of Allah, do hearts find rest. So memorizing Quran in this world will provide us with stress-free life. In the hereafter, the Messenger, peace be upon him, informed us in a hadith that we will be told on the day of resurrection, اقرأ ورتل وارتقي كما كنت ترتل في الدنيا فإن منزلتك عند آخر آية كنت تقرأها, which means recite, and ascend in heaven as you used to recite in this world. For your position in heaven is at the last verse you used to recite. Of course, on the day of resurrection, there will be no mushaf that we can read from, so we must memorize the Quran to reach higher levels in Jannah. My method that I'll explain to you in this video can be used to memorize any surah of the Quran. But in this video, we will focus more on memorizing Surah Al-Baqarah. Why Surah Al-Baqarah? There are many reasons that made me begin with Surah Al-Baqarah. Surah Al-Baqarah, as you know, is the second surah in the Holy Quran after Surah Al-Fatiha, and thus has special importance. It's also the longest surah in the Quran, and successfully memorizing it will be a great motivator to memorize the rest of the Quran. Surah Al-Baqarah is full of lessons that solidify our faith. It explains the characteristics of believers, unbelievers, and hypocrites. It includes a large number of stories of the prophets, beginning with Prophet Adam alayhi salam and the story of creation, the story of the children of Israel, and the story of our Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. Also, Surah Al-Baqarah talks about many Islamic rituals such as fasting, zakah, pilgrimage, and the direction of prayer. It shows us the virtue of these rituals in becoming closer to God. After that, Surah Al-Baqarah prescribes to us many laws that regulate marriage, trade, and financial dealings. Knowing these laws and requirements will benefit us in this world and bless our deeds. Now let's explain the method I developed to memorize Surah Al-Baqarah. First, I divided Surah Al-Baqarah into 40 sections in order to memorize each section by itself. One may say, what's new about this? The Quran, as you all know, is already divided into 30 parts, and each part is divided into 2 hizbs, or parties, and each party is divided into 4 quarters. However, the traditional division of the Quran, which you can find in all of our printed Quranic copies, is based on dividing the Quran into sections of equal length. For example, each of the 30 parts is approximately 20 pages long, and each quarter is approximately 2.5 pages long. Thus, the traditional division does not reflect at all the content of the book and is solely based on length. A proof of this can actually be found in Surah Al-Baqarah, which we are talking about today. The length of the surah is 2 full parts and 2 quarters and a half. The quarter containing the last part of Surah number 2, Al-Baqarah, which is in front of you on the screen, also contains the beginning of Surah number 3, Al-Imran. The same quarters contains 2 completely different surahs whose contents may be completely different. The method I used to divide Surah Al-Baqarah into 40 sections is different and considers the content of the text. This method is found in some of the Quranic copies, but not the majority of them. This is a picture of the Quran version that includes the division system I used. The system I used divides each surah into sections in a way that makes each section semi-independent. And make each section talk about a specific story, a specific idea, or a specific Islamic ruling. It is not possible to find in the same section both the end of one surah and the beginning of another. After dividing the surah into 40 sections, I developed a table that lists the beginning of each section as we see on the screen. The table is a very important part of the method I'm explaining to you, so you should print it and retain a copy. For example, the first section starts with Alif Lam Mim, and the second section starts with وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا. Also, as you see in the table, I assigned the 40 sections to 8 days, since the objective of this video is to memorize Surah Al-Baqarah in as little as 8 days. Thus, each day is assigned 5 sections. Another important part of my method is the ability to remember what each of the 40 sections start with. Can you think of a way that helps us remember the beginning of all the sections? Actually, there's an easy way, and many of you may have used it before while studying for exam to remember long lists that contain many items. The way is we take the first letter of each item in the list and make up imaginary words from these first letters. We then memorize these imaginary words. These imaginary words often do not have any meaning, but we can still remember and use them and pass the exam. Alhamdulillah, thanks God, there is no exam here, but the idea itself is very useful. We will use the same idea to remember the beginning of each of the 40 sections as we see in the table on the screen. The first column of the table lists the number of days from 1 to 8. And then on the right side of the table, you have the beginning of each of the 5 sections assigned to each day. Finally, the second column contains the beginning letters that each of the sections begin with. So for example, for the first day, the beginning letters of the 5 sections are A, Mi, Ya, I, Ya. If you want to remember the beginning letters of the first day section, we will use the following imaginary word, Ameya Eya. These words have no meaning whatsoever, but can still be easily memorized with practice and repetition. One may ask why some beginning letters are shown in red. When a beginning letter is shown in red, it means that the actual beginning letter is the Arabic letter Waw, which is a coordinating conjunction that means and. In such cases, I use the second letter to represent the beginning of the section. I found out that using the second letter instead of the Waw is better because Waw as a coordinating conjunction is very frequent in the Quran, and using it to remember the section is not as effective. In the same way, I was able to make other imaginary words to help remember the beginning of all the sections of Surah Al-Baqarah. These imaginary words are Amiya, Iya, Ya'i, I'i, Laquya, Qaya, Masali, Ya'i, Yalaya, Ya'i, Sayaya, A'i, La'a, Faya'a, Maya'a, Yali. Words, again, that have no meaning whatsoever, but can still be easily memorized with repetition. The simple idea, inshallah, will make it easy for you to remember the beginning of each section. So let's repeat one more time these imaginary words together. Amiya, Iya, Ya'i, I'i, Laquya, Qaya, Masali, Ya'i, Yala, Yaya'a, Sayaya, A'i, La'a, Faya'a, Maya'a, Yali. Once you remember the imaginary words, you will easily remember the beginning of all the sections of Surah Al-Baqarah for the entire 8 days. This is the first step in your journey for memorizing the entire surah. With this first step, you identified your goal, which is memorizing the 40 sections individually. You will also notice that I use different colors in the table so I can quickly remind you what each section is talking about. If you recall, I said before, the advantage of the method I used for dividing Surah Al-Baqarah into sections is that each section is almost semi-independent and talks about a specific story, specific ritual, or specific Islamic ruling. I colored the section that talk about the greatness of God and the greatness of the Holy Quran in purple. I colored the section that talk about the stories of the children of Israel in blue. I colored the sections that talk about the stories of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam in red, and I colored the sections that talk about the Islamic rulings and the rituals in green. Therefore, inshallah, the table will not only help you remember the beginnings of each of the 40 sections, but it will also give you a mental map with which you can quickly visualize the order of Surah Al-Baqarah. This will not only help you to memorize it, but it will also maximize you benefiting from the lessons presented in this great surah. Now that we know what each of the 40 sections begins with, the next step is to memorize each of the 40 sections individually. I found out through my own experience that it's difficult to memorize the whole section at once, since the sections can be long. Individual sections vary in length and can be a page and a half, or even 2 pages of the printed Quran. So I found out it's best to divide each section into subsections and memorize each subsection separately first. After memorizing all the subsections of the particular main section, we aggregate them together and memorize the main section in its entirety. As you can see, I divided the 40 main sections into subsections. The number of subsections in each of the 40 sections varies because the lengths of the main section, as we said, are not the same. Some main sections are divided into 2 subsections only, and others are divided into 3, 4, 5, or even 6 subsections. After we divided the main sections into subsections, now we should talk about the really important stuff. How are you going to memorize each subsection? In order to memorize well, you must use 3 things at the same time while memorizing. These 3 things are sight, hearing, and speech. With regard to the use of sight, you must look at the verses while memorizing them. I developed an innovative way of displaying the verses in order to maximize the use of sight in memorizing. I'll explain this in detail later on in the video, inshallah. With regard to the use of hearing, and in order to know the correct pronunciation before memorizing, you must listen to the Quran from a reciter who reads the verses correctly, while at the same time looking at them, before you read yourself. With regard to the use of speech, after you hear each verse from the reciter, you should repeat the verse after the reciter to get used to the correct pronunciation of the verse. This way, you simultaneously use sight, hearing, and speech while memorizing. This will improve the effectiveness of your memorization effort. At this point, I would like to remind you that there is no such thing as strong memory or weak memory. Your memory can be compared to a muscle. The more you exercise it effectively, the stronger it will get. And whether you are 60, 70, 80, or 90 years old, your memory will improve, inshallah. Regarding the use of sight in memorizing, I mentioned before that I developed an innovative method to display the verses. What is this method? In this method, as you can see on the screen, I use different colors to highlight the most frequently used words in the Quran. One of the benefits of color coding is that you will see that the Quran is not as difficult as many people think. On the contrary, most of the words in the Quran are repeated frequently. In fact, 50% of the Holy Quran use only 50 words. I was surprised to know that, and that's why I decided to use different color codes to show the 50 most frequently used words in the Quran. You can actually see when you look at the picture of this section in front of you that about 50% of the section is colored, which means that 50% of the section is made up of the 50 most frequently used words in the Quran. Here is the list of the 50 most frequently used words in the Quran. You can see from the list that many of these words are prepositions, such as from, on, in, or to. And to make it easier to recognize these prepositions, I use the yellow color to highlight them all, while using a different color to write the various prepositions. There are also several pronouns in the 50 most frequently used words list, and some verbs such as the verb say, be, and believe. If you are interested in this topic and want to learn more, I made videos that explain this in more detail. The use of different colors helps you quickly distinguish the most frequently repeated words. This, inshallah, will maximize the effectiveness of using your sight in memorizing. The second thing you need to use is hearing. You do this by listening to a reciter who reads the verses correctly at the same time that you are looking at the color-coded verses. To enable you to use these 2 senses together, sight and hearing, at the same time, in an easy way that you can use anywhere and anytime completely free, I uploaded short videos containing all the main sections and subsections of Surah Al-Baqarah on a YouTube channel. Each video displays the color-coded verses and repeats the recitation of each section and subsections 5 times. By watching the video and reading each section 5 times, inshallah, you remember it. The suggested number of reading times 5 can be more or less depending on your readiness for memorizing. So if you feel that in the beginning you must read the section more than 5 times, that's okay. As your memory becomes active with practice, you will find that the number of repetition needed goes down. I have included the link to the YouTube channel in the description box below. In order to maximize the use of hearing in memorizing, I used in the videos a simple recitation that can be easily imitated. The recitation I use in the videos adheres to all the rules of tajweed, or the rules of the proper recitation of the Quran. Yet, at the same time, it's simple and easy to repeat. Simplicity is very important to improve the effectiveness of memorization. A good example of this are pop songs and how easy they are to memorize because of their simplicity. Compare that to opera songs, which are difficult for anyone to repeat and memorize because not everyone has a strong voice they require. Okay, so we learned that the proposed method relies on, after dividing Surah Al-Baqarah into 40 sections, and each section is further divided into subsections, the method relies on listening first to the subsections for every section, and we do this on YouTube. And the reason that we use YouTube is that we can listen to the reciter and at the same time look at the section of the Quran in front of us, so we can use more senses in order to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of memorizing the Quran. So the next question is, where or how are we going to access the YouTube channel? And the answer is fairly straightforward. All we have to do is to copy the address of the YouTube channel that contains all these sections and subsections. And once you copy them, and by the way, I'm going to include in the first comment of this video the address of the YouTube channel to enable easy access of the playlist. So once you copy this address, you go to your web browser and you paste it, and this will take you to the channel. Alif Lam. So as you can see, this is the main channel and this is a playlist, and the title of the playlist is listed on the top right hand side, as you can see, and it's titled 002 Surah Al-Baqarah sections and subsections. And in this playlist you will find all the different sections and subsections. Very important to know the method used to represent the title of every section and subsection. So for example, now the section that is playing is section 0020101. As you can see here, under the video, you will find the title of the section that's being played. So the title, every title consists of 3 numbers. The first number, which is common among all the different sections and subsection, is 002. 002 represent the number of Surah Al-Baqarah and the order of Surah Al-Baqarah, which is number 2 in the Holy Quran. The second number is 01. If you remember, we said Surah Al-Baqarah is divided into 40 main sections. So the second number represents the number of the main section. So this is the first main section of Surah Al-Baqarah. This third number is the number of the subsection. So the subsection 01, this is the first subsection of the first main section of Surah Al-Baqarah. If you go back and look on the right hand side, you will see that after the first video, the second video is titled 0020102. So again, still the first main section of Surah Al-Baqarah, but it's the second subsection. And then next you have 00201 all, and here you will see that this is the entire main section number 1 of Surah Al-Baqarah. and it combines subsection 1 and 2. And even if you add the length of the video, by the way, the numbers shown in black here represent the length of each video. So if you add these two numbers, 2 minutes 38 seconds plus 1 minute 18 seconds, roughly you're going to get the length of the entire section, 3 minutes 55 seconds. So it's important to know that the number of section and subsection is relatively large because Surah Al-Baqarah is the largest surah in the Quran. So overall, there are 165 sections and subsections. 40 of them are main sections, so the number of subsections are 125. So someone may say, well, that's really an excessively large number, 165 sections. It will be difficult to memorize Surah Al-Baqarah. But, I don't want you to look at it this way, because as you can see, the length of each video is relatively very small. 2 minutes 38 seconds, for example, for the first video. And the reason that I prefer to have a large number of videos and each video is short, because this will allow you to access these videos in many different situations and many different times of the day. So whether you are waiting for public transportation, or you're waiting for your meal, or you're waiting at a bank, you can always, get your phone or iPad out and then start playing each section and then memorizing. And this will keep a connection between you and between the Quran throughout the day, not just at a very specific time of the day. And inshallah, this will increase the blessing and will increase the effectiveness of memorizing the Quran. Another thing that you have to be aware of is that the video repeat the section or subsection 5 times. So it's not just playing the section only once, but actually, as you can see here, under all the YouTube icons, you can see the number of recitations. So for example, here, this is number 1. If you forward the video a little bit more, you're going to find number 2, and so on, number 3, and then at the end, it's number 5. So there are 5 recitation of the same section. And the whole idea is, inshallah, with the blessing of Allah, you will be able, after 5 repetition of the subsection, you will memorize it. And then remember that after you watch the videos for all the subsection, you again going to repeat the subsections together in the whole section. And then again, this will reinforce what you have memorized. Another thing I want to point out is that some of you may say, well, I tried to follow the recitation, but I found it's kind of fast. And one way to solve this issue is to use the YouTube property that allow you to reduce the speed of playback. And the way you do this is you go to settings, as you can see here. So if you click on settings, and then you can go to playback speed, and instead of being normal, you can reduce the speed by choosing 0.75. And then if you play, you will notice that the speed of recitation has reduced. So this may make it easier for some of you to follow along the recitation. So it's very important, as I mentioned, that when you're trying to memorize every section, use as many senses as possible. So obviously you have to use your hearing sense, because you will be listening to the reciter. And at the same time, it's very important to use your vision by looking at the screen. And as we mentioned before, we used a very unique way of writing the Quran that was never used before. And basically the idea is to enhance the vision sense by using colors. And the color coding we use is basically to show the words that are mostly used in the Quran. And we said that almost 50% of the Quran is made up of only 50 words, and we use different color codes for all these words. And the goal is to basically help the person who wants to memorize the Quran by identifying, number one, the words that are repeated several times. And I think this is very important because a lot of people say, I really like to memorize the Quran, but so difficult, the words are so different. But the reality is the words are repeated over and over again. So just by looking at a section for the first time, you can see, okay, well, really this section has so many words that have been repeated. For example, yu'minun, yu'minun, shown in gray here, unzila, unzila, shown in red. So you will start realizing that, inshallah, Quran, after all, is not very difficult to memorize. And then, inshallah, maybe later on we will make another class or course on how to actually understand the meaning of the Quran. So my recommendation is to use as many senses as possible as you are trying to memorize the Quran. So we mentioned the hearing, we mentioned the vision, and at the same time, use your tongue to speak and repeat after the reciter. So for example, when you hear a recitation like this, you can just repeat after the reciter like this. إن الذين كفروا سواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. So by repeating, if you are in a place that allows you to repeat, this obviously add another sense to your memorizing effort, and inshallah will help improve the effort. I think many of you are now asking, how much time do I need to commit to this inshallah blessed endeavor? Assuming that you only need to repeat each section 5 times to memorize it as proposed in the YouTube videos, this table shows you the time you will need in each of the 8 days to get this accomplished. From the table, you will see that on average, you will only need an hour and a half a day. Really, that's not a lot of time. And many of you may be surprised how little time comparatively is needed in each of the 8 days to achieve what many may have thought an insurmountable goal. But in fact, the method that I presented to you is very well organized and very well thought out, and give you everything you need to allow you to memorize anytime in any place. That's why the required time commitment is very reasonable. Of course, if you find out that you need to repeat each section 10 times instead of 5, you then must watch each video twice consecutively. This will double the required time, which means an average of 3 hours per day. If you do not have 3 hours a day to spare during the 8 days, you can easily increase the number of days dedicated to memorizing Surah Al-Baqarah to 16. It's very important that you review what you have memorized. If you don't review, you will forget what you memorized very fast. So how do you review? Whenever you memorize 5 sections, for example, sections 1 to 5, you review these sections also using the YouTube channel. But when you review, you don't need to watch the videos of the subsections. Only watch the videos of the main sections. This will reduce the review time significantly. And when you review, I suggest that you start with the last section. So if you are reviewing sections 1 to 5, for example, start with section 5, then 4, 3, 2, and 1. And inshallah, when you memorize all of Surah Al-Baqarah, review the entire surah at least 5 consecutive times. When you do the 5 reviews of the entire surah, alternate between starting from the first section, moving to the 40th, and then starting from the 40th section, moving to the first. After these 5 reviews of the entire surah, inshallah, you remember Surah Al-Baqarah forever and never forget it, especially if you start reciting its section as part of your daily prayers. I wish you success, inshallah. And don't forget to share the video with your friends and loved ones so that you can earn the reward of spreading the knowledge of the Holy Quran, and so that it will be in the balance of your good deeds on Judgment Day, inshallah. Also, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button so that you can get notification anytime new content like this comes out. And lastly, if you want to memorize another surah from the Quran using the same method that we covered in this video, leave a comment down below containing the name of the surah so that I can add its videos to the channel in the near future, inshallah. All right, that's all I had for you today, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.